Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. This is episode 11, I believe, and we have Jocelyn Gorenson here. And she has been a carnivore for a while, I believe, and I'm just kind of going to let her introduce herself and how her life was before carnivore.
Hi, Leah. Thanks so much for having me on. Yes, actually, you caught me on a really good day because today is exactly the 2-year anniversary of my first day as a carnivore. So, great way to celebrate to be here with you. To give you a little bit of idea of my background, actually, health challenges have been a part of my life since the very beginning. I was born with a congenital heart defect called subaortic stenosis. And that required 2 open heart surgeries to correct back in the 80s. And things are all good there. I still go in for checkups to make sure that everything is in good shape. But from a young age, I was kind of very accustomed to being a person who just went to the hospital more than most kids and spent more time in hospitals than most other kids my age. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2000. I was 20 years old. And that started sort of a long journey of health and wellness for me. I started by reading a book in 2004 called The Maker's Diet, basically about the maker being God, and we need to eat in a way that God intended us to eat, the natural things that are there that humans have eaten for millennia. And that kicked off my health journey. And I'm skipping a lot of steps along the way. But a few years later, I eliminated gluten. That helped. But I still found myself with the ulcerative colitis having good days and bad days, depending a lot on my medication, and just kind of low level being sick all the time, with an occasional flare up. Well, then came 2020. And as we all recall, 2020 was a rough year for all of us. It was especially rough for me because that was when I discovered the dreaded bullseye rash on my back and was diagnosed with Lyme disease.
Oh, gosh.
Yes. So that was a very big struggle with my health. And I went to a functional medicine doctor, got a lot of good advice. I moved into sort of the paleo realm, which helped. Eliminating processed food helped, eliminating gluten helped, eliminating grains helped. All of these things helped. And it was about a 6-month battle with the Lyme disease where I thought it was going to possibly end my career and or my life. It was brutal. That said, during that time, my next younger brother, he's 2 years younger than I am, I'm talking with him one day on the phone. This was in 2020. And he says, well, you should just try carnivore. You should try carnivore. I said, what's carnivore? He goes, well, you just eat meat. I'm like, okay, and what else? It's like, no, you just eat meat. Don't eat anything else. And in my mind, I grew up on Sesame Street where you're trained, eat your vegetables, right? You got to eat your vegetables. And paleo is a lot about eating, fruits and vegetables. And I thought that sounds like the most unhealthy thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. That's ridiculous. Why would anyone just eat meat? So I dismissed it. I dismissed it for 3 years. And I'm part of several ulcerative colitis online forums. And I kept seeing people in these online forums saying, I went carnivore and I eliminated all my symptoms. I went carnivore and found health. I went carnivore. And I just kept seeing this over and over and over again. So I spent most of the summer of 2023 researching, lurking in the carnivore boards, right? Like reading all of these testimonials. And I had this list of autoimmune issues. It was ulcerative colitis, migraines, joint pain, which was left over from the Lyme disease, candida. I had eczema. I had just all of these things. I was just low-level sick all the time. And I thought, okay, I was going on a vacation. I was coming back August 12th. And I said, all right, August 13th. I'm going to do a 1-month experiment. Eating only meat, that can't possibly be healthy for you. However, 1 month isn't going to kill me. So I gave myself 30 days, starting August 13th, 2023. And just said, okay, I'm going to try this carnivore thing. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work. And then I know, and then I move on. 2 weeks after starting, I was sitting next to my husband on the couch, and I looked at him and I said, honey, I feel good. And he was like, oh, that's great. That's nice. You feel good. That's fantastic. I said, no, you don't understand. I feel alert. I feel strong. I feel energetic. I feel powerful. Like I felt this feeling that I hadn't felt my entire adult life. And I said, this is what normal is supposed to feel like. I had no idea because I had gotten about 90+% better with the Lyme disease symptoms. That felt pretty good in comparison to thinking, is my career over? Is my life over? Right? 90. I was thankful for 90%. I was most days with the ulcerative colitis doing pretty well. Occasional bad day, occasional flare. And then I got to the point 2 weeks on Carnivore that I said, I actually feel good. This is what feeling good feels like. Wow. By the end of that month, I said, why would I go back to anything else? I felt so much better. So that was my introduction to Carnivore, and I've been Carnivore ever since.
Okay. I personally would like to know more about ulcerative colitis, and if you can you just explain the condition for maybe those of us who don't know the ins and outs of it?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So, symptomatically speaking, I was actually working a very high stress job in upstate New York that summer, and I'm trying to think of how to put this delicately. My body was not processing food very well. I was not getting to the end of a meal before I was running to the bathroom. There was a lot of internal bleeding, cramping. I lost a lot of weight at that time, not in a healthy way, because my body just wasn't processing food. And going to the bathroom probably 20+ times a day. It was exhausting and debilitating. So to put it in simple terms, medically speaking, it's ulcers on your colon. It's kind of a cousin to Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease tends to affect the entire digestive tract, whereas ulcerative colitis just affects the colon.
Okay. And then your heart condition, were you born with it?
Yes. Okay. So I had a heart murmur when I was born, and they said, let's keep track of this and see if it improves. Subaortic stenosis is basically a narrowing in the aortic valve. So there was a membrane there, and the hole for the blood to get through was too small. So at the time that I was diagnosed, it was a fairly recent diagnosis. And they went in to open up that hole more to help my heart pump more efficiently, and discovered after a couple more years, they said, oh, we were a little too conservative the first time. We have to go in and do it again. So, there's a lot of things that you go through in that time. You get on a lot of antibiotics, you're exposed to a lot of chemicals, which I'm thankful for. They saved my life. Did they contribute to my later health problems? Who's to say? I don't know. What's interesting now is for people who are diagnosed with subaortic stenosis, they tend to not crack you open anymore. Like I've got a zipper scar from here to here, and they had to crack me open. Now what they do is they go in and they inject a teeny tiny little heart attack just into that tissue so that it'll die away and open up. It's far less invasive. And I've had people ask me, are you sad that your surgery was so invasive and now it's not as invasive? I said, no, I was part of that. Like I'm here and I helped lead to that progress that other people are benefiting from. So no, I take a lot of pride in it. I'm very proud of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've heard of a couple people who actually were fairly healthy before having surgery. Maybe they had a cancer tumor or they got their prostate removed, something along those lines, like a pretty important surgery. And they come back and they're way worse than they had ever been in their entire life. And I've heard this before, that the medical system, and it's not the doctor's fault. The doctors, they want to do good. The surgeons, they want to do good. but it's the way that these drugs they're using, the way they just the way they do the surgery, it just doesn't leave your body the same way it was, and it almost makes you come back to get another surgery, and then another surgery, and then another surgery, till you're eventually, dead. And it's a sad reality that we live in a world that cares more about money than it does genuinely having healthy people. But it's kind of shocking because you think, oh, I'm going into surgery, I'm going to be all better when I get back, and
Right.
really, that's not the reality for so many people.
Right. It's true. And I had, again, I told you before we started recording here that I've been an open book. I had some other surgeries along the way. Let's see, hang on, make sure I'm getting my dates right. 2019, I think, I had a hysterectomy. And I just had a mass of fibroids all over the uterus, which was causing a lot of problems. Part of me today wonders if that could have been connected to oxalates, which, as we know, can manifest themselves in a lot of different ways. So it corrected the most immediate problem, but I think there were some deeper problems that needed to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. I always think now, looking back, if I hadn't started Carnivore when I did, by the time I was 20, I probably would have needed a hysterectomy. Yeah, my endometriosis, even now, I still have, like, places where I'm pretty sure I've still got scar tissues. And it, like, I can feel it, the very exact area. So I know how bad that has got to hurt, to just be covered in it. That's awful. I mean, and doctors won't diagnose stuff like that till it's, like, last resort, too.
Well, they say if your doctor talks about medications before they talk about diet, you don't have a doctor, you have a drug dealer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, how long have you been carnivore?
15 months.
Okay, good for you. You're doing great.
Yeah. I'm not too far in, but I'm not a newbie now. I mean, compared to some people I am, but so oh gosh, your eczema. So how long did that take to clear up? Because I know some people it cleared up within days, and the other people it took a couple months. How was your eczema?
It took a couple of weeks, and I will tell you that when I make certain adjustments in my diet, eczema is the first thing to come back, which is kind of surprising. I feel best when I eat more red meat. If I spend several days in a row eating chicken, the eczema can come back. So I can have like a meal or two of chicken and I'm okay. But if I make that the primary source of nutrition for myself, I start to see it come back. So it's weird. It happens on my left foot and my right hand. I don't know exactly why that is.
Do you have that problem with pork, or is it just chicken?
Pork too. So again, I try to eat mostly red meat, mostly beef. And again, right now I've got a pork roast in my crock pot that's going to be part of dinner for tonight. I also picked myself up a great cowboy steak this morning that I'm going to celebrate with. So yeah, I do best on mostly beef, but I can eat other things here and there in moderation.
I have a theory about eczema, and I believe I'm the only person who has this theory because I just came up with it today. So I had eczema really bad on my hands, my arms, my legs, like my whole life. And when I started Carnivore, it went away everywhere except my hands. But at the time, I was bleaching my hair myself. So as soon as I stopped doing that, my eczema actually went away. And, chicken, and I'm not completely sure about pork, but I know at least for chicken, it's all dumped in water with chlorine in it. And what does the chicken do when you dump it in chlorine water? It absorbs all the chlorine. So, and chlorine's just another type of bleach. So
Right.
I'm wondering if the eczema is not just from the chicken being monogastric and having a little bit more toxins, if it's from the chlorine.
That's a really interesting theory. I'd never thought of it from that perspective before, but you could be right. There could be a connection there.
Yeah, because I don't hardly ever eat chicken anymore. Maybe if I go out to eat and that's like the only option. But for the most part, like I don't cook it at home. Chickens, I don't even like it. It's so bland.
I agree.
So how often were you getting migraines?
A few times a month. It wasn't like a daily thing, but I'd say 2 to 3 times a month.
Yeah, and do you still get them at all on Carnivore, or is it completely gone?
You know, it's interesting. Early in my carnivore journey, I did what a lot of people advise you to do, and that is I upped my electrolytes.
Mm-hmm.
So I was drinking a lot of the Element packets in water, and I want to say this was maybe 3 months in. I was starting to get migraines again. And I thought, this is really weird. And I did a bit of research on it. And long story short, someone said, hey, you should probably try cutting the Element out and see if that helps. I think you're doing too much of that. Because I was doing 1 or 2 packets a day. And I cut that out and the migraines stopped again. So every once in a while, if I'm, because you can get an electrolyte imbalance where you don't have enough, but you can also go the opposite direction. And I think that's what happened to me. So every once in a while, if I'm like outside and I'm getting really sweaty and gross and whatever, I'll drink some electrolytes, because that's what they're there for, right? To replenish what you've lost when you've, it's a hot day and you were exercising outside and you're just sweaty and gross. Then I'll drink some. But yeah, those have pretty much gone away.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I was diagnosed with chronic migraines as a toddler, I believe, or suspected, because obviously it's hard to diagnose a toddler with anything like that.
Right.
And it was like chronic migraines. I think it was idiopathic because they couldn't find a reason that I was having them. And I also had a heart murmur when I was a toddler too, but that went away fairly easily, as you're supposed to grow out of it.
Right.
And then I think I was anywhere from like 6 to 10. I got officially diagnosed with chronic migraines, and then from there, like my whole life I was unhealthy, so I still get them somewhat frequently, I shall say, but not because of food. I know my triggers, and I know when I've triggered one, and it's been every time that I've gotten one since I did Lion Diet, it's been triggered. Staring at blue light, sleeping in too late, big trigger. And that's so weird. Or going to sleep too late at night, also another big trigger. And honestly, I haven't had any issues with electrolytes, but I don't really take them a lot. I did take them a lot when I was working outside for summer camp this summer. I was maybe having half to 1 packet a day of the Element, so definitely not as many as you were. But I didn't notice anything like that.
And if you're working outside and you're getting sweaty, that's when you should have them, right? Like that's the best time.
Yeah. So you're basically Lion Diet. You only eat red meat.
I eat, I would say, I eat maybe 80, 85 to 90. I do have eggs, actually. I love eggs. And then it's the chicken and the pork. Sometimes you just want a little bit of variety, right? Sometimes I'll do some fish just to throw in like a side dish. I'll throw that in on the side, and that works pretty well for me. But I feel best when I eat, a big old skillet full of ground beef or a nice big steak. It feels like a power up.
Yeah. I believe I have some histamine issues. So recently, every time I've eaten a giant steak, I haven't felt great. But I really want to go further into that and kind of understand histamine intolerance and why this is the thing, and why I can tolerate pork better than I can steak, and that's like really weird for a lot of people.
Sure.
So do you have anything else that you want to share?
The only other thing I can share here is sort of, I think for me, it was an important part of my journey. And this happened early in 2023, just a few months before I started Carnivore. And I tell people all the time, the change had to happen in here first. It was a change of identity. I'm a professional musician. That's what I do by trade. And I was getting ready for a big concerto performance where I was going to be the soloist at the front of the stage, and I needed to have a fabulous dress, right? And I weighed about 60 pounds more than I do now. And I went into the dressing room and I was trying on dress after dress after dress. and hating the way that I looked in every single one of them. And that following Sunday, I was in my Sunday school class at church, and we were reading Ephesians 2:10. It says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do good things that he planned for us long ago." And I was thinking about that identity of being God's masterpiece. And I was sitting there, I was just crying. And my friend looked at me and said, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I told her how I'd been in the dressing room and I was trying on dress after dress after dress, hating everything about the way I looked. And I was thinking about my heart defects, and I was thinking about my autoimmune things, and I was thinking about ulcerative colitis. And all I could think was some masterpiece. Like, I didn't believe it at all. And it was a major turning point for me in my life, because I had to realize, I had to identify as God's masterpiece before I could make all of those external changes. The change had to be in here and how I saw myself first. So I think that it's important for anyone, and there's a lot of books that have been written about this and a lot of talk that have been given about this, whatever major change you want to make in your life. It can't just be, well, I want to try to, fulfill this New Year's resolution. I'm going to try to read every day. I'm going to try to exercise every day. I'm going to try to do. No, I am a person who reads. I am a carnivore. I am, I'm a masterpiece, right? You have to change the way you see yourself and the way you self-identify in order for those changes to feel like you have some ownership of them. And that's my encouragement to, I think, everybody, know your identity and know the truth of it.
That's so powerful. Yeah, I was always with you on that. Like, you go to church and you hear all these nice things, and people tell you that you're made in the image of God, but when you look at yourself in the mirror, you don't feel that way. Mm-hmm. And now, maybe some people will attack me for this, but I think it's definitely a heart problem, but it's also a food problem. The food, it generally messes with your head. Like, you don't think so, but it does. And I've heard of a lot of people, Christians, non-Christians, whatever they believe, and they do carnivore, and their mentality totally changes. And I've met some people who almost think they're godlike because they feel so good. And I'm like, okay, maybe you could dial it down just a little bit, but like, the just confidence and the self-assurance you have is like something like nothing else. And I've met a lot of people who want to go carnivore or reach out to me. They're like, I want to try carnivore. And I'm like, what's your why? And they don't know. They're like, oh, I want to lose a couple pounds. I want to tone up for summer. I'm like, that's not a why. You need to deeply have a reason, or else you're never going to commit to it. And that's really important, because if you commit to something and break your promise, you stop trusting yourself after a while, and then you'll never commit to anything. And I think for people, and this is my biggest piece of advice, whether you're, sick or whether you're just a healthy person looking to be healthier, you have to have a reason to go carnivore. And it can't be a vain reason. It's got to be something that really, really speaks to your soul. Yeah, and I think you had that reason.
Absolutely. And I've said before, I'm the scale moves here and there within about a 3-pound range lately, but I've lost close to 60 pounds. But I've told people so many times, even if I hadn't lost a single pound, the way I feel is worth it 100%. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm thankful to be 60 pounds less. That is a good thing. But just to have health, to have vitality, to have energy, to know what normal is supposed to feel like, all of that is 100% worth it. I'm super thankful for it.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people, not so much as actual carnivores, but people who are not carnivore, be like, why have you stuck to this diet? You haven't lost a lot of weight. And I don't look like I've lost a lot of weight. I've lost about 50 pounds. And recently I've gained 12 of those pounds back, and I don't know why, but I'm not that concerned about it, because I've come to the point where I realize if my body thinks something's stressing me out so much to where I need to gain 12 pounds, then I got to figure out what that is, and I got to address that internally. instead of stressing more about the 12 pounds.
Well,
And this has been fairly recent. This has been within the last week that I've gained 12 pounds. So it's quite odd. I don't know why, and I'm still trying to figure that out. But
well, if you gain 12 pounds in a week, that's not fat.
yeah,
It should be
that's what I'm
moderate.
like. It's not fat, but like something's definitely going on here, and I honestly think it's because I've been changing up a lot of my house. So like I've been moving from room to room, like switching things. I've been sleeping on the couch, and I haven't been sleeping good, and I think
Mm,
that was a big stressor for
sure.
me because not sleeping causes migraines, and migraines causes bad days and all this kind of junk that I don't like dealing with. And then on top of that, I decided to quit drinking coffee and quit eating dairy. So I think I've just stressed my body out, and I need to give it a couple weeks before I
Yeah. You'll
decide
settle
to.
in. You'll settle in. You know, I say that I'm a continuous N of one experiment, right?
Yeah.
So I started on January 1st. I said, what if I could go a year without dairy? And then I thought, I bet I can't do that. And especially, you know, I do a fair amount of traveling for various reasons. And oh, it's going to be so hard to do it. But, you know, what if I could? Well, it's August 13th and I've stuck to it. I'm a very determined person. So that's do I plan on being dairy free indefinitely? No. But I figured, you know, if I can make it a year, then I know I can do it. You know how we in dairy we get the casomorphins, and I don't get those same satiety signals. I can just eat, even if it's full fat, unsweetened, unflavored Greek yogurt that's from a local dairy. So like the very best of the best, right? I start eating it and I'm like, oh, and I can't stop. So you know, I'm always experimenting with things. I've done lion for a month here or there. You know, I'm doing no dairy now, and I'm always looking for that feedback. How do I feel? You know, what are my metrics? You know, and all of that. So I'm a fan of within this carnivore, underneath the carnivore umbrella, which is a pretty big umbrella. It can, you know, people think it's incredibly restrictive, but you know, there's a spectrum, as you know, on carnivore. I think it's a good idea to play around and say, what about more electrolytes or less? What about yes dairy, no dairy? What about more chicken? What about no chicken? Just see how it feels.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I know a lot of people who do keto or like close to carnivore, and they're like, I could never go full carnivore. That's too restrictive. But the less you eat, like food wise, the less restricted you feel because if I'm not eating dairy, well then I don't have to worry about am I eating too much dairy. If I'm
Right.
not eating like pork and chicken all the time, I don't have to worry. Am I going to be bloated? Am I going to have other issues? And if I'm not eating like sweeteners and cacao powders and like those kind of keto carnivore-ish.
Yeah.
They're basically seasonings, but they're still not carnivore. I don't have to worry. Am I going to eat way too much chocolate carnivore ice cream today?
Right.
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 So that's my reason for cutting out dairy. And surprisingly, I've eaten so much more cutting out dairy. I have a bigger appetite. And I think that has to do with probably hunger signals being screwed up from dairy and from coffee, that now my body's like, okay, how much do I need to eat? And it's like everything.
And you
um,
know what? You just keep experimenting and
yeah.
you figure it out, right?
Hmm.
For sure. Yeah, I had, you know, years ago before I even knew what carnivore was, I had experimented with keto, but it really didn't work for me because just replacing foods with
Hmm.
other things, you know, and you get those keto desserts and I would just eat way too much of the keto desserts because I'm a sugar addict. So that's why I use the term sugar sober, you know, in addition to being 2 years carnivore. I'm 2 years sugar sober. Let me tell you, the night before I went carnivore, I had a big old bowl of moose tracks ice cream. It was glorious, and that was my last moose tracks ice cream, last sugar. You know, for the past 2 years.
Yeah, Kelly Hogan talks a lot about just completely eliminating that sweet taste. And for the longest time, I was like, I don't want to do that. I like sweetener in my coffee. And then I did blind diet, and I was like, after a couple of days, I'm like, I don't quite crave the sweet taste
Right.
anymore. Then I made the mistake of adding it back in.
Uh huh. But you have to do that. You
have to go
experiment.
through I want something sweet after dinner for another couple weeks. But all in due time, it'll go away, and
For sure.
I'll figure it out. Yeah, I'm kind of sad at myself. I'm like, I was gonna do so good after a Lyme diet. I was just gonna eat beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. I wasn't gonna reintroduce coffee. I wasn't gonna reintroduce sweeteners. I wasn't gonna reintroduce dairy. But you know what? I ended up doing all of that. It's like you get one taste of freedom and you take too much, and I'm getting back on track.
Sure, and you gained knowledge through all of it. Knowledge and experience, which is now fueling, your current path.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been an amazing talk. If you have anything else to add, you can go ahead.
I think that's everything that I was thinking of saying. So it's really great to meet you, and thanks so much for having me on your podcast. And I'd love to come back anytime.
All right, that sounds awesome. Ugh.